Okay, we're going to continue our exploration of visible learning strategies for digital instruction. The specific instructional strategy that we're going to talk about today is anonymous open response exit tickets. That falls under John Hattie's classification of evaluation and reflection. So this is one strategy that we use to get students to think back on what they just learned. And according to his meta-analysis, John Hattie found that this strategy has an effect size of 0.75, which means that this is considered a highly effective instructional strategy. Okay, very briefly about exit tickets. You probably already know this, but they are an informal way of measuring our students' understanding. When we do so anonymously, students can feel more comfortable sharing feedback that they might consider undesirable, whether that's an instructional strategy that they didn't like that I was trying out, or even just a misunderstanding about some of the content. Students don't always feel like that feedback is welcome, and so providing them an anonymous outlet for giving that feedback can help elicit that. And then finally, when exit tickets are open response, that can require students to process more deeply what they just learned. And it can also give us, as teachers, a broader set of data to work with. We don't always know what we are probing. We don't always know what we're going to find when we probe our students. And so asking an open-ended question can sometimes yield some surprising results that might guide our instruction in unexpected ways. Exit tickets work well with both synchronous and asynchronous instruction. So it's a great strategy for the moment we're in right now. And you would want to do this at the end of the lesson. So think back on what you learned and then respond to certain questions. So let's take a look at one very typical exit ticket question, something I've used in the past. What's one part of the lesson that was confusing for you today? I've used this in the past, and now when I look back, I can see that while this question may have been good for some of my students who actually were confused about a part of the lesson, I probably had some students that didn't experience any confusion whatsoever during the lesson, which begs the question, how do they respond to this? Either they would respond honestly and say nothing was confusing, in which case they might feel like they're not following directions, or they go the following directions route and just make something up. Either way, that's not what we want. We want our students to be both honest and authentically engaged. So we need to make it authentic. We don't want those rote responses where students are just going through the process and going through the motions. The only time we'd want them to do that is if they were in mime school. So we want to avoid that. One way we can do that is by giving them some freedom in how they choose to respond. So providing multiple questions that they could choose, or even multiple ways of responding, multiple modalities. And then another way that we can make this process authentic is by actually using the feedback, by referring to it, by incorporating it. That helps validate the process. So to recap the three steps for meaningful response tickets: first, give an exit ticket with some choice. Second, actually look at the responses, analyze them, look for trends, and look for some outliers as well. Process it, internalize it, and then last, incorporate those exit ticket feedback into your instruction. So either maybe spiraling back to a concept that a lot of your students are still struggling with, or adjusting an instructional strategy, or even just making reference to the exit tickets from the day before will let students know that you saw them and read them and that they matter to you, and that's going to validate the process. The next time you ask your students to write an exit ticket, they know you're actually going to read it and that it matters to you, and that might cause them to put a little more effort and make it a little bit more meaningful on their end too. There are a variety of tools that we can use to do exit tickets in the digital world. I really like Padlet.com for this instructional strategy for a few reasons. First, Padlet has a wide variety of tools that students can use to respond. They don't just have to write. They could make a voice recording. They could make a video response. They could respond by giving me a link or by posting an image. They could even draw their response. So that's a nice feature of Padlet. We talk about choice. Just choice in how you respond is one way that we can make this process more authentic. Also, Padlet makes it very, very easy for anonymous posting. So we'll take a look at that. Padlet is EdLaw 2D compliant, so we know it's safe for us to use with our students. And while there is a paid version, the free version just limits you to 3 simultaneous Padlets. So we can look at how we can make this instructional strategy work even with just a free account. So let's take a look. So here is my Padlet. It's named Exit Ticket. And you can see that it has 3 columns. This Padlet layout is called the shelf layout because everything kind of gets stacked on a shelf. So each column is a question, and I have told my students that they can choose which question to respond to at the end of the lesson. So if they're confused at the end of the lesson, there's a column for that. They could click the plus sign and respond. If they are feeling like they're learning and they can tell that they're learning, I want to know about that. I want to know what they're learning and how they can tell that they are learning something. These 2 are pretty basic, just probing for weaknesses or misunderstandings and probing for strengths or new learning, new connections. And then I like to have a third one that I swap out. Something a little bit more creative or something that actually ties better to the specific content of the lesson. So here I'm asking my students to make connections. So giving my students some freedom with how they respond hopefully will make the feedback that they give me a little bit more authentic. Okay. Before I move on, I want to point out I got these prompts from this website. If you just Google exit ticket prompts or exit ticket questions, you'll get a variety of responses. I really liked this website because it categorizes the questions. So probing for strengths and weaknesses or content-specific exit ticket questions. This is a great source, but there are many such websites. Okay, a few things about the settings in Padlet. First, remember that you can make these posts anonymous. Currently, they are because I have turned off attribution. If I want students' names to show up, I would just toggle that on. Notice my name is now here. If I want anonymous, I can just turn that off. I can also require approval. Sometimes I like to have this on if I'm going to make this a resource for all of my students to see. I want to kind of be the gatekeeper and make sure that what they see is something they should be seeing. And then last, if I have a free version and I'm limited to 3 simultaneous Padlets at once, I can simply save this Padlet either as an image so that it looks like it does on my screen, or as a PDF so it looks just kind of more basic text printout. So to do that, we could go either to share or to our 3 dots here. I'm going to click export, and then down below, I'm going to save as PDF. And my letter size and portrait orientation are just fine. And now I've got my students' feedback from the day. I can download this, I can add this to my drive, I can just print it up if it's anonymous and reference it for the next day. And then I can go back and delete the responses so that the next day, I've got a blank Padlet to start with. My students could just use the same link. I still have their responses from the day before because I downloaded it as a PDF. And this Padlet is ready to go for my next lesson. And that is anonymous, open-ended exit tickets with the help of Padlet.